Hey everyone, it's Saul Sunforge for Dungeons and Taverns. We're gonna go ahead and do part two. Now that I got some sleep and everything's settled down with the campaign, we're gonna be able to get back into making some of our videos until uh, in like a week and a half when I gotta start really preparing for the next session. So I think the last point I made at the end of the last video was note taking and how you should take notes on quests and important NPCs and things like that, because the players may not. On the other hand, if you have good players who take notes, then you can use their notes. You maybe take a few notes or whatever, but compare your notes, and you'll be good to go. You'll have one last thing to do as the DM, and as a new DM, it's very important not to overwhelm yourself. And on that topic, uh, point E is build only what you can manage. Um, and what I mean by that is when you create your own world, or even uh, just add a whole significant a bunch of homebrew to a module that is already mostly set for you, you tend to overbuild. And it's fun. Maps, I love making maps, but even I sometimes overbuild. You enjoy putting down the cities in the consideration of the size of your map, but how many cities is the party going to legitimately need is probably something you should be asking yourself. Um, it's different if you're creating a campaign world that several campaigns will exist in, or possibly simultaneously, like I've done in the past, which is very fun, but it's not for new DMs, I don't think. Um, but as a new DM, especially, make as many cities as you feel the energy to fully flesh out, to make them feel alive and full of NPCs and things like that. It's better to have. It's better to have. I'm just gonna throw out a number, I guess. It's better to have six very fully fleshed cities, very well-rounded cities, than to have 24 really crappy cities that you kind of just make on the spot. Um, you know, because you want to mostly focus on the type of adventure it is, right? If you're going for exploration-based campaign, then maybe trim down on the cities a little bit and just make extraordinary locations that the party can visit. Or lots of things out in the wilderness that they can explore. Maybe throw in a little bit of your backstory lore by giving them a faction or two that they run into. You could do these types of things, and maybe throw in some Underdark adventures. Um, you know, just you don't want to put too much on your plate as a new DM. You want to try to make it as easy as possible because your plate's already going to be full. My next point is official sources only. Excuse me. So you'll have a lot of players, if the more you play anyway, that will want to use unofficial content. And generally, that stuff isn't. You're not really sure if it's balanced, or who it's balanced for. Um, the unearthed arcana that Wizards of the Coast releases themselves are potential changes that are going to happen, but they put them out for more advanced players and DMs to deal with, and they're things that may not ever become official. And so, for that reason, I would caution you to have when you have the players create their character, their creations, to only use the player's handbook, Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and then Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, as those are official books, and The only thing that changes with those are some erratas that are released. Those are like basically updates to certain rules or clarifications for things that might be confusing. The wording, um, you know, and so for your first campaign, certainly, I would very much caution the use of existing official sources only. The next point I wanted to talk about was magic items. The game rules as written is balanced on the assumption that players do not get magic items. This has actually been stated uh, both on Twitter and it's actually in the Dungeon Master's Guide itself. Um, so, whenever you give magic items to your players, just understand that as a DM, you're making the job just a touch harder for yourself, um, and that's fine. But I just want you to be cognizant of that fact. Because the more magic items the players have, then obviously the better they'll be able to deal with your threats. And it's fine to give out magic items. Certainly, I give out magic items. But you also don't want to give out too many magic items. I find that when you give players, a steady stream of magic items, that one, they get less appreciative of the magic items that they've already received, and two, they start expecting magic items to come a little bit faster and a little bit more, and it's a never-ending cycle where you constantly have to up yourself, and you kind of want to avoid those spirals. And also, when you give players too many magic items or too many choices, they tend to forget about items. They tend to forget about items that you've given them. And this is worse if you actually create the items yourself, because you not only did you spend the time to make the items, and the players took the time to get the items, but they're not even going to use them at the end of the day. And so instead of giving your players more magic items, you could do other things. You could give them more coins to allow them to buy magic items, and also rules as written. There doesn't have to be a single place in the game that they can buy magic items. It just depends on what type of role that you're trying to play. I would suggest not giving anything that is above uncommon until they're out of the first tier of play. Certainly, uh, levels 1 to 5. They can have some common magic items and potions and things like that. Those are considered magic items too. Uh, Potions are. Maybe give them a bag of holding or something like that, depending on if you track the encumbrance or not. Um, you know, there's a lot of ancillary things involved with it, but generally you don't want to give your players too many magic items too early because they're going to trivialize a lot of your encounters until you start getting a good feel for what your players can handle and not what they should handle according to the book, because every magic item is going to change. It's going to change the difficulty of these encounters, and so it's like a fine line. Just you'll be observant. You'll be able to fine tune things the further on you go. But like I said, I'd caution on giving too many magic items. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is currency. We just talked about how you should probably give out magic items, the frequency and the levels and things. For currency, um, the game as it is right now actually has probably less things in it that you could spend money on than in the past. But as a good DM, you can add extra things into the campaign that they'll want to purchase. Um, immediately comes to mind is property. Property is very expensive, and so just adding some property that they can purchase automatically just throws it from, they don't really care about earning gold because there's not much for them to buy besides, a few basic items here and there, to we need to save up lots of money to get this property. It could be maybe an income generating property or things like that. My players right now are about to embark on making themselves an entire settlement in the live campaign. So, these things are all going to take money. All the buildings and everything that they put into starting up their own town is going to cost tons and tons of resources and money, and they're going to have to buy those resources. And so you could think of a whole bunch of things that they really could spend money on, and just work on that, adding a few of those things into the game. You could have a few magic vendors, certainly, that sell, maybe spells, potions, and some magical items. You don't have to have every vendor selling magical items. Certainly, larger cities are more likely to have these items and have more currency and things for you to buy and, save and buy and collect and things like that than a smaller city, because there's more opportunities for you to do those things. But there's also other things that you could do besides give them gold. Okay, there's art objects. Those really, gold coins. If you think about it, gold coins really start to weigh. Any coins, if you have, even nowadays, if you think about in real life, if you have $10 in quarters in your pocket, those quarters are going to be trying to pull your pants down, man. They're heavy after a while, And so if you're walking around with 100,000 of gold, you're not, realistically, you wouldn't be walking around with much more than, if you're carrying your gear, you probably wouldn't be walking around with much more than, I'd say, off of an estimate right now, off the top of my head, about 850 coins total is probably the most, and that's for a strong character. But, D&D, it chooses when and when not to be realistic, right? So, but the way instead of giving out coins, you could give out art objects like chalices and crystal decanters. You could give out art objects, gold art, frames, and you could give out gems. They could find a bunch of gems. Gems certainly are more valuable than the in terms of weight to size, weight to value ratio, than the coins. You can have one diamond that weighs, a very insignificant amount, but it's worth, a few thousand coins for that little diamond. But if you carried around 1,000 coins, just one coin is going to weigh more than one of those diamonds, right? But if you have 1,000 of those coins, or that one little diamond, you should always want to take the little diamond feature. So as a DM, always be looking for ways to award the party things other than coin. And you can even look into their backstory for items that they directly may be interested in. Excuse me. So, yep, there you go with the currency, man. And also, I guess before I switch over to the next topic, it doesn't have to be just gold, silver, platinum, copper, electrum. You can do currencies for different kingdoms if you want to, or have like an underground, like a shadow currency that is only traded amongst information brokers and kind of nefarious individuals, if you wish. And so you'll be able to have other currencies as well, and you could possibly, if you want to, if you have the time or the inclination, you can make a exchange rate, and then have money lenders and things like that as NPCs that you can also bring into your world based off of your currencies. One of the last sections I want to deal with is combat and random encounters. Combat can break out at any time. Even in the city, even with just regular NPCs, there's a group of players called murder hobos for a reason. Um, and sometimes you'll have a player that comes into your campaign, or a few players who come into your campaign, who will only look to try to you know kill NPCs and things like that. So you need to be ready for combat to start almost any time, really. Um, and One of the things that takes the longest in Dungeons and Dragons, and this isn't just my opinion, this is probably almost any seasoned DM's opinion out there, but combat is what takes the longest, and sometimes by far. The higher level that the group gets, and the more people that are in the group, and the more things that they're fighting, all contribute to how long combat takes. You can get through a round real fast, but if there's magic users, especially if the party and the enemies have magic users, and if they're higher CR creatures with legendary actions and villainous actions and layer actions, combat can drag on for quite some time. And so what I do is before each round starts, I'll give the players about a minute or two to discuss what it is that they want each other to do, or what their strategy is going to be to set up combos and things like that, or 2-on-1 situations. And so, I let them talk. As the DM, you can obviously listen to what they're saying and plan around it, but I don't do that. I'd probably caution you on doing that. Maybe for the more intelligent enemies, so you could play them more intelligently. It's kind of like a free pass because they're giving you their plan. So as an intelligent monster, you can just kind of work to divert the plan that you heard, and that will kind of work. That will kind of work out because that creature or monster or whatever is more intelligent, so they would be able to figure out more of the contingencies that the party may do. Like, if I do this, they're going to do this type of thing, and they're going to think of more. They're going to be able to extrapolate more examples of that to hinder the party's advancement based on their intelligence. And then for random encounters are simply when the party is traveling, whether it's in the dungeon or overworld travel, where they're traveling from one location to the next. There's going to be what are called random encounters. Those are encounters that you didn't plan, or the party didn't plan. And the way I do that is, according to what zone they're traveling through, I as the DM, and later on as the player through lore and NPCs and things like that, they'll find out how dangerous the land that they're currently trying to traverse is, okay? And so what I do is I'll roll a d6, and if it's a really safe land, then they'll only get a random encounter on a 6, okay? And then I'll roll a d4, and then evens, it's a hostile encounter or neutral encounter, and then odds it'll be like a friendly NPC, or like a merchant, a traveling merchant's good. Roman guards are pretty good, out on patrol. Those are all pretty good examples. That travelers too. Travelers, you got to have travelers. If you don't have travelers as part of or a potential random encounter, you don't have to make every encounter a traveler. But certainly when the group is traveling over a long distance, they're going to see another traveler or two at the very least on the road, no matter how desolate the road is. Just because the world is constantly supposed to be moving and doing things while the party is also interacting with the world. The world isn't supposed to sit still and just only be alive in front of the party's face, right? So you want to have these travelers moving around. And so so you roll your 50-50 dice or whatever, and the encounter is a friendly encounter. Then that's where you introduce your travelers and things like that. Not all of your random encounters have to be enemies, but a good place to do random encounters is once the party sets up for the night for campsite. Somebody's on watch or whatever. The first watch may not see nothing. The second watch may hear some rustling in the bushes and go and investigate and find out that ambush was trying to be set up, but they found out about the ambush beforehand, and maybe they get a surprise round, um, you know, before initiative starts. These combat rounds are only supposed to be 6 seconds long, right? So the reason I let the players do a little bit of strategizing in between rounds is because 6 seconds of time, it really isn't that much, okay? And the way D&D works is everybody's supposed to, like, yeah, it's turn based, but it's that way because everybody's supposed to be doing their actions at the same time. So in that regard, the next person in line would actually be doing what they're doing pretty much simultaneously as the person they just watched go. So they're not going to have time to evaluate what that person's move was and then make their best move accordingly. So that's why you let them do it in advance. And if you have breakdowns every single round, multiple times around maybe, it's going to take combat that already lasts a decent amount of time, which is most players will tell you that's where the game kind of bogs down is the combat. But if you let them keep doing that, it's going to contribute by far to a much slower combat. We just had a combat, not this past session, but the session before that, that we got to the top of the 6th round, and it was about 4 hours into the combat. That's way too slow. That's entirely too slow. They should have been in the 6th round of combat, still within the first hour of combat. And it wasn't. I mean, it was an okay battle, but it's just because the constant breakdown of discussion. The most ideal strategy. For 2 or 3 players out of 6 players, every round or every other round, you might have the same 2 or 3, but it's usually going to be 2 or 3 players every single round. And if they have a 5-10 minute discussion between each person's turn, that's you're just adding hours to the combat, making it drag on. So if you give them a minute or two between the rounds, and then you tell them like, all right, now you guys have to keep your strategy talk to an absolute minimum, ideally none, so we could adjudicate what you want to do, and it's what you want to do, So you'll have players that will try to tell other players what they should do on their turn, and it just creates this whole weird slew of weird situations that you probably just rather not want to deal with. And so you keep the talking during the fighting, actually, while the dice are rolling, pretty much to just you and the player whose turn it is declaring what it is they want to do. And any other talking besides that, be nice about it, but be firm, and put an end to that as soon as you can. And you'll find out that your combats will be a lot smoother and a lot faster. This generally only applies to higher level parties too. Lower level parties, the lower level creatures are only meant to last for 1 to maybe 3 hits, and so those combats are going to go rather quick because those monsters have less options. Those players fighting those monsters have way less options, and there's less talk about the most ideal thing to do, and there's more of just doing it, which is what you want. The next point, and it might be the final point, because I'm thinking of these things, writing down what I want to talk about, and then talking about it. So for right now, we'll just say this is the last point, unless something else comes after it, I suppose. But I wanted to touch on behavior and conduct. D&D is a social game. Generally, people are, usually they're friends beforehand. If there's strangers beforehand, then there might not be a lot of issues right off the top. But generally, when friends get together, they like to, muck it up a bit. They might like to drink or smoke or whatever you allow if it's in person. If it's on Roll20, obviously, there's nothing you can do about what you do and do not want at your table, other than telling players if you can tell that they're really sloshed, that you'll give them a warning, and then after that, it's you kind of got to deal with the situation, or else you're risking sabotaging the rest of your player base. And so you kind of in session zero really explain what it is that you do and do not wish to allow at the table in terms of behavior. And that, of course, that includes cheating if you're playing in person. All forms of cheating would be like the player rolling the dice and putting something obstructing your view from the dice so you can't see what they rolled. Them making changes to their character sheets on their own or in between sessions without having earned something that would reflect that. Conveniently forgetting to, decrement rations or supplies or things like that, or forgetting to tell you about the negative, drawback of a spell that they're going to cast and only the benefit. And some of these things are innocent, um, you know, or rolling the dice and having it fall on the floor, but re-rolling the dice when they fall on the floor, but only if it's a bad number. If it's a good number, they'll swear that that's what they rolled, and so all re-rolls, all rolls that are on the floor, no matter what it hits, should be re-rolls. And these are all things that you can go over in session zero, which I guess should be another point that I make for session zero. So that'll be my final one. I'll do is session zero, and then later on down the line, if I come up with a nice, good list of things that I haven't touched on yet, or maybe things that need expounded on, because I tend to over-explain things. So I've been working on going the opposite way with it, and then if I need to explain more, just let me know and I will. Alright, here we go. Session 0. It's time for your campaign to start. You made a starting NPC or two. You've made a starting location, whether it's a small village or a hamlet. And then maybe you made a fantastic location or two during travel, and maybe a dungeon on the side if they go that other way instead. What do you do? Well, session 0 is ideally where the players make their characters. Session 0 is for you to tell the characters tell the players kind of what setting their characters will be in. Whether it's a survival type atmosphere, if it's going to be a maritime adventure where you're pirates swashbuckling on the high seas. And the reason you want to let the players kind of know what the theme of the campaign is, or things that their character may know based off of their starting city, depending on if you let them pick different cities they're from in your world, or if their backstory even covers those things. This is the time where you kind of give the players your expectations. You tell them your rules, and then if you have any homebrew rules, which as a new DM, the only homebrew rule that I would suggest is the one that I like to use, where potions, if you're giving somebody a potion, it's to use a potion yourself. It's a quick action, but if you're giving somebody else a potion, it's your quick action, and then it's their quick action in order to use it. So you're giving your quick action up to give them the potion. They're giving up their quick action to take the potion. And the reason is because rules as written, it takes an entire action to drink your potion. And if you're fighting in a situation where you need to start taking your potions to stay alive, well, you can see the problem. You're busy taking potions while the other guy's busy hitting you. You're just kind of postponing the inevitable at that point. It's a downward spiral. And so I make my potions take quick actions if you're the one drinking the potion, and you're the one who owns the potion. But yeah, you give the players a little bit of lore. They create their characters and things, and all their decisions are going to be they're going to be based off of what you tell them the starting situation is, the type of world that they're in, Um, you know, like if, for instance, if they're a cleric and their god is Obed High, but your campaign doesn't have Obed High, or your god doesn't even have deity, or your campaign doesn't have deities at all, that player's gonna be rather pissed off when they get in the campaign and they're looking around for a temple or somewhere to pray, or things that have to do with their religion, and then all of a sudden, well, no, it's not in the game. If you tell them up front, then they can dictate their situation to determine if they want to continue that way or not. And then you also tell them things that you don't like in your campaign. If it's in person, you can have a little bit of drinking before or after the session, or maybe during the break or something. But you don't want people getting sloshed, or whatever rules you have. If you're playing in your house, then obviously you have house rules and D&D rules, and you tell them all of those things. If you're playing on Roll20, then obviously it's going to be a bit more relaxed because they're not in your house playing, so they're doing whatever they're doing is over where they're at doing it. But yeah, session zero is pretty important. A lot of players, you'll find that they won't want to do a session zero just to make their characters and just to go over the rules. They're going to want to do a little bit of playing too. And so when you go to the table for session zero, using table also thematically, since Roll20 there isn't a table, but it applies for that too. But when they come to the table, session zero, they don't want just the rules and explanations and to build their character and roll those dice and then go home. They're going to want to play a little bit. So when you go to session zero, make sure that you have something prepared for them, even just if it's 2 hours or so, or an hour and a half, just to get them going, just to get their introductions out of the way, and maybe a starting quest, and maybe going towards that starting quest, and maybe even a combat, and then there you go. That's your first session. That's all it takes, really. That's all it takes. And so session zero is important. You let the players know, what you will and will not tolerate. The players will kind of let you know what it is that they won't tolerate. Some players, they get triggered by, and I know triggered is used as a derogatory word, but it doesn't have to be. I don't feel, but they get triggered by extreme violence, or towards children, or rape, or incest, or all those different fringe categories on the outside that would probably take place in this world at some point, just on the amount of different people and their goals and their evil, and there's just different situations that all these things would come up, and they could make the story more compelling. But there's certain players that may not be interested in those things, and that's fine. That's completely fine. But you want to find out kind of that, before you get into the situation where you're presenting prostitutes in a whorehouse, and describing, ample gratuitous sex scenes, if that's okay with your players even. Some of them might have, trauma in their background, or, they might not like that some races are racist towards other races. They're mistrusting of them, or certain cities may not. They have a lore history where they've been invaded by certain people, and so they're going to be racist towards them. Well, you might want to see what your group is cool with first before you do any of that, add any of that stuff in. And I would very much caution. This is a bonus. I would very much caution keeping real world politics out of D&D completely. Just don't do it, because it will turn into, oh, you're for that side clearly, or you're clearly on this side, and you'll have people from the other side of the aisle who, it'll go from being a game to being very personal and attack like very quick, and spiral out of control. And so you just want to keep real life political situations out of the game. They don't belong in the game. Don't even discuss them during the breaks, because you might find out that your break is going to last a lot longer than you anticipated. So there's quite a few. It's a pretty good primer. I probably could sit here, if I had a week of time and sat here and thought of every little detail that I wanted to tell you, and I could probably make this into a 10-hour video series or something like that. And I might make it into a series or like a little mini series, perhaps. But I feel like I've given out a pretty decent amount of tips. You know, so far that a brand new DM, and even some DMs who have just a few campaigns maybe under their belt, they're not brand new, but they're looking for inspiration or thought process from a DM who does have a bit more experience. It's not a bragging tool, it's just the truth. That you may want to bounce ideas off of other people. And so this list here, I feel, does a pretty adequate job on allowing you to play your first campaign as hassle-free as possible, while making sure I don't have to sit down and think about this for a week. Really, about an hour of thinking before the video came out is all I did, and it just comes with time, I suppose. So just to recap, since this is the second video, people might have not seen the first video, so we're going to recap what was in that video. We talked about campaign starts, and I gave 5 unique campaign starts for you guys that I thought of off the cuff. That I've also inserted different options that you could change, so you could change up the intro with suggested options, or even change it up, if you want, with things that you would like, using most of the shell of what I produced, but coming up with the meat and potatoes yourself, and that's completely cool. I just did this to give you a little bit of creativity boost. Each option has multiple options within it, and so can create, out of those 5, probably 20, 30 different unique starts. The second point was build location. You only want to build the things out that the party is going to see the next session, primarily because the party can change their mind at any time and send everything that you created into the trash can. Although you can move those things around if you wish, depending on if you're playing Theater of the Mind, or if you're making a actual static map where that thing is set where it is, and that's where it's at. And then in that case, the party might not touch it, and it's cool because whatever the things that they don't touch on, you'll have enough eventually left over that you'll be able to have a very solid foundation for a campaign of just things that haven't been touched from previous campaigns rather soon. Just be patient. The next one was lights, camera, action. Players get very excited for their characters in the world, but make sure that you share the spotlight rather even between all the characters. If they create backstories and have their own arcs and things like that, make sure each character gets their own time to be the hero, or have the spotlight on them for their arc, but then take it off of them immediately when it's somebody else's turn. And then when you're not doing anybody's arc specifically, you kind of ideally want to make it maybe within the same session or each session, trade off on who it is that is taking the spotlight, so nobody really outshines anybody else. You'll have players who will not like that because they only want to play if they get the spotlight, and if they don't get the spotlight, they won't play. That's fine. Don't give into those players, because those are the people that you want out of the hobby. You want people who play well with others. This is a team-based hobby. It's a community-driven story where everybody contributes to it. And if there's one player who's trying to insinuate themselves into every scene, even though they're not there, they're trying to metagame heavily based on things that they have no idea about. Yeah, those are players you want out. And so after you give them a warning or so, you could just go ahead and, maybe this campaign isn't right for you, and just be nice about it and get rid of them. Take notes. The players are never going to remember everything you tell them, ever. They're just not going to. And so, even though you have a whole bunch of things on your plate, and your plate is extremely full to the point where people are bringing you additional plates that are also full. Adding extra things to it probably isn't the way to go, but I'm telling you that this step here is going to pay off for you. It's going to pay more dividends than most other steps that I've given, is take notes. If you take your own notes, you'll be able to remember reoccurring NPCs, quests that were accepted, and rewards that were paid out already, perhaps ahead of time if the party persuaded so. You want to remember that the party has these goals to fulfill for NPCs, and not just give them a reward to fulfill it and trust they'll eventually do it. You want to press the issue at that point. If the party goes ahead and accepts things to do, you want to press the issue. The best way you could press issues for quests to show that they take immediate precedence is to put them under a time crunch. And then if you have multiple quests under a time crunch, well, then it becomes a decision for the party, and it becomes actually an engaging story element. And the way you get these is by you writing them down. If they're players that you know or trust, or you've been in multiple campaigns with that you know take good notes, bounce your notes off of their notes, and then and the players will actually have a better enjoyment out of it, and they'll be more thankful of your efforts because of it. And that was actually it. That was it for the first video, and then of course you've seen everything that happened in this video. So hopefully this helps you out. I really do hope it does. If you have any questions of what I've said, or any other dungeon mastering questions, period, feel free to leave them in the comment section, and I'll either reply to your comment with a comment, or if there's enough questions, I'll make a video, ancillary video, titled replies to, and then I'll have it be replies to this video, and you'll be able to get your answers in short order from there. Maybe a more elaborate answer than one that I can do typing it out, just for time's sake. Alright, so I'm Saul Sunforge. This is Dungeons and Taverns. If you like what you watched, please give me a follow. Give me one of these. And if you know any dungeon masters in training, or people who are considering on being dungeon masters, let them know about the video, and hopefully we can grow our community organically through word of mouth. Alright, have a great day. I'm going to go edit a video after this, and then I have another video I probably need to upload. I got a lot of work to do is the line, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So thank you for watching, and it's because of you that I have all this work to do, and I'm happy to do it. So thanks so much for watching. Thank you for your time and your consideration, and have a great day.